Welcome to the Grade 11 College Counseling presentation. This is your official kickoff to the university application process. My name is Dr. Hinchy, and today I'm joined by Mr. Forrester and Mr. Wickham. While we will cover loads of information today, we simply can't get through the entire process, and that's okay. We will have more of these meetings throughout the year. Additionally, each grade 11 student has been assigned to work with one of the college counselors on an individual basis. At this time, I want to point out that we are happy to work with students on whatever pathway they choose. However, with that in mind, most of our students apply to the UK or to the US. Thus, the majority of our country-specific information today will focus on these two destinations. Without further ado, let's get this presentation started.
So how do we start this university and college search process? For many young people, this will be the first time they've been in the center of making decisions about themselves and their future, right? You probably decided on ACS as a school, maybe when a young person was 8 or 9 and didn't necessarily have the ability to make that choice themselves. Perhaps you have only recently come to ACS and you visited a lot of other different schools and chose to come to this one for a number of different reasons. If that's you, then you've kind of already started going through this kind of process. Of picking a university and identifying the right options for you. And what we find is, because this is the first time young people have been the primary driver of decision making, and because there is simply so much choice out there in terms of post-secondary pathways, whether that's in the US or the UK, another country, Canada, for instance, that there is sometimes young people can be a little overwhelmed by the amount of choice that they have. And so we have a couple of different philosophies here in the College Counselling Department of where to start and how to begin. Right. And that first thing to do is to really do some deep introspection and thinking about who the young person is and what the young person is looking for in the next stage of their life. For some young people, this is a vocational education, which is more applied and more related to the real world. For others, it could be a real academic and research intensive or theoretical education in the next stages. For some, they might have a specific idea of exactly what they want to study, and others may not have any idea at all. And so it's about figuring out who they are and what they're looking for in the next 3, 4, 5 years of their life. It's worth bearing in mind that, yes, some courses and some institutions, what you choose has a direct impact on what you go on to study in later life. But in many instances, a degree course doesn't lead directly to a job, and it's about the development of skills and attributes that can be applied to lots of different areas of work. So we'd ask you to all bear that in mind as well. One of the things that we really promote here in the College Counselling Department is this idea of fit. All right, and to really figure out what fits and the kind of university that fits a young person, they need to do some thinking along with the family about what they're looking for and what they want in an institution. So we define fit as finding the right institution that meets the academic, the emotional, the geographical, the social, and the financial needs of a young person. Now, that's a lot to unpack in a short amount of time, but here are some of the things that we might want to think about when considering fit. So some people might want a research university, one that is grounded in academic research, that is training students how to think like researchers, to produce academic papers and to further our understanding of knowledge. Other young people might be looking for a university where they can really gain an understanding of the world of work, or where they can start to develop the more applied aspects to a field of work they're interested in following. You, as families, will have particular geographic locations in mind. Perhaps it's where you live currently or where you might be moving to in the future. It could be where you currently are here in the UK, or it could be somewhere that you've previously lived as well. Geographic location could be determined by citizenship or residency status, and that obviously has a determination on how much you might pay for a university. Lots of different universities also have slightly different courses, and a business management degree, for example, in the Netherlands could be very different to a business management degree in the UK, and again in the US or in Canada. So it's really identifying what a young person is looking for in a particular course or a particular subject and how they might want to study that. We know that a geographical setting of the university, and by that I mean a sort of more urban environment or a more campus-based university on the edge of a town, or even more rural option, is really important in the student experience for 3 or 4 years. So we ask young people and families to think about, where they would like to live. Ultimately, they're going to be living somewhere for 3 or 4 years, and they've got to be, in order to be successful, they've got to be happy there. So we ask them to think about the setting and the location of that institution as well. We ask them to think about the size. A very small boutique business school is going to offer a very different experience to a university with 35,000 students. For instance, there could be more or less sporting opportunities. There could be more or less performing arts opportunities at universities. There could be different proportions of international students given, the size of the university. So we ask young people to think about, do they want to be part of a large community? Do they want to be part of a much smaller community? Typically here we're a community of 1,500 students, right? But we've got very young students and slightly older students, so we're a really mixed community. There are universities that are much smaller than our school. There are universities that are 60 or 70 times as large as our school. So it's really important to consider the size of an institution as well. And then we've got an idea of selectivity. So what we mean by selectivity is the number of places are available given the number of applications. And it's worth bearing in mind at this point that selectivity is not a measure of quality. Just because a university is more or less selective doesn't mean it's providing a better or worse education. It just means it's different and there are specific focuses on the kinds of students that they're looking to attract. Some people might want to go to a very academic selective institution, which could be, involve high-level thinking and, deep research. Others, again, might want a slightly less selective university where there is maybe slightly less competition amongst the student body. So it's worth bearing in mind about what a young person is willing to put themselves through the selection process. Typically, a very selective university is looking for more essays, more components of the application process. It will mean probably more admissions tests or higher scores in admissions tests. So it's really about finding this balance. Then there's cost, of course. We understand that different residency and citizenship results in different costs for international students and for students. So understanding how much you have available as a family to cover the cost of education is really important, and having a discussion, a clear discussion with young people about how much is available for them to study is really, really vital over the next couple of months as well. Because the last thing we want is for a student to apply to a university and to find out that they just simply can't afford to go there. And this is their dream school, the one they've been thinking about for the last 6 months or a year, even longer perhaps, and just to find out that it's just going to cost too much for the family, too much for the individual. So please start having those conversations. I touched on extracurricular activities in terms of size. Some universities have on-campus housing. Some universities don't offer housing on campus at all. Some require students to live on campus for all 3 or 4 years. Others generally are expected, their students in the second year or above to move off of campus and start living in a private house. So, what a young person is looking for there is also really important. And differences of facilities, again, different sizes of institution will have more or less facilities and, access to things like sports, labs, educational facilities, library facilities, etc. So all of these things are important, considerations when looking at different options of universities. We're going to run a workshop on the 11th of November about all of the different considerations that young people might want to think about, and then some tools for identifying some of those. So as we work with young people one-on-one and in workshop environment, we're going to be trying to hone in and encourage our young people to really think about what they're looking for in their future experience.
Here in the College Counselling Office, we have a lot of resources available to the students. We have the College Counselling University Library, which is behind us, and it has a lot of college-specific books. Students are always welcome to come and read these at any time that they want. Also, students have their own college counsellor, or will be given and assigned their own college counsellor, who can also be seen as a resource for the students. We've all been working on this process for a good number of years, so we bring also experience to help talk through some of these university choices that students are going through. Additionally, there is a ton of virtual information out there. We have virtual visits, in-person visits, webinars, exhibition links, all available for students. It's really important that you're aware that you are more than welcome to come and join on these sessions, especially now that being in grade 11, you're starting the process of researching universities now. All visits and events are listed on the PSL, on the landing page of the college counselling pages in PSL, on the bulletin board outside of the office, and on the weekly newsletter that gets sent out too. Please do encourage your son or daughter to attend these. They are often opportunities for students to talk directly to admissions representatives and get a good idea about what their universities have to offer the students. Additionally, if students have the opportunity to go and visit universities, this is a good thing. However, if it's not possible, there's also a good range of search tools out there that can help students become more informed with what is out there. Some of these resources can be found on the links below this presentation in the PSL. Please do find some time to look through the PSL. More importantly, there is also BridgeU, which we'll talk about more in depth later on in this presentation. Students also have access to College Board, who host Big Future, which has got a lot of statistics about lots of different universities. There's Princeton Review. This is good to learn more about universities. There's also Campus Reel and UVisit, to name a few more, which help students to get a good picture about what life is like on campuses, what it looks like, what facilities there are, through virtual tours. Our main source for students to start their research is BridgeU. However, this can also be supplemented by a number of other fantastic resources, such as Niche and College Vine, where students, like in BridgeU, can create a profile which helps them tailor their research more specifically to their needs. Again, there are links to the resources that give statistics, virtual tours, and other great information in the description below this video in the PSL. Another resource that's available to students is a process called Moresby. Moresby is an interactive platform which helps students make better informed decisions about their subjects, career choices, courses, and even apprenticeships. It's a good way to start students being a little bit more reflective upon their own strengths and areas in which they excel in and then can pursue later on. Other options are open days and taster days. If these are still a bit of an issue to get to, then they do have these online too. However, there are a significant number of universities now giving provision to these on campus as well. It's an opportunity for the students to get to know, to get a better view and see these universities in a different lens. And last but not least, we have an extensive array of resources on the PSL. If you're not familiar with this resource for college counselling specifically, please do let us know, because we're very happy to send you the correct link. I find that the majority of the time, a good number of questions can be answered by spending an appropriate amount of time in PSL. It really has been developed there to help this process be more accessible for students and their parents. There is information on how to research universities on the PSL, ideas for extracurricular activities, internships, to-do lists, how to write your personal statement, and essays for the US, which we'll look at in more depth later on in the year, not yet. I'd like to just stress now that this is the time to start learning about what different universities are out there. And this stage of grade 11, this is the best time to spend learning more about universities. And consider what is also important to you. What are you looking for in a university and or a future career? So considering there are a large number of factors while you are doing your research, it's very easy to get lost in the information. So it's really important that you keep a record as you're going along. What I've got here is just an example of how you could be doing this. I have this example for you in the PSL pages. Essentially, it can be as simple as creating your own Excel sheet though, and you can create your own columns according to what you feel is most important to you as part of your search for different universities. You can document what kind of entry requirements that are needed for some courses, what average GPA is required for admission, its percentage of accepted students, SAT score range that is commonly accepted by the college, whether or not they have sports and clubs available at certain universities, and a whole range of other factors such as its location. Is it rural? Is it urban? Which one of those two are you looking for? Whether or not it's on campus, and what type of facilities they also have as well. Any tours you go on as well can also help to inform you as you collate your information. And this could also go into a sheet or a spreadsheet like this, or one that you design yourself. Now in BridgeU, there's an additional function that you can also use. So when you're researching universities in BridgeU, which will be spoken about a little bit more later on, you can actually, as you're going along, add notes inside the BridgeU system too. There'll be more specific detail on this given to students as they progress through their research, and once we have a chance to have our initial meetings as well. So here's another example of a resource that helps you to compare statistics when you're researching your universities. There's a large number of places that you can find this. This example here that you can see on the screen is just a screenshot from a niche.com website. Again, please see links below the video in PSL to see more of these such resources. Now, that being said, one of the very first go-to resources and the best go-to resource for you to be looking at for your research and for your self-reflection on what type of universities you're looking for is the BridgeU platform.
BridgeU is the software system that we use here at ACS Cobham to keep track of all of our students' university applications. However, more importantly, it is a tool for the students to use to help them along with their university application journey. The system allows students to build their profile, which then aids in their university search. Additionally, BridgeU has numerous guides and events throughout the year, which our students can take advantage of. Eventually, letters of recommendation, school reports, academic transcripts, and other required documentation will be sent to universities using this system. Students, as well as parents, have access to the system and should have received an email from pat@bridgeu.com to set up their account. For now, we ask students to log in, complete their profile builder, and have a play around. Like any system, the more that you use it, the more you will get out of it. While it's a bit too early to start submitting applications, it is important to be aware of how many applications you are allowed to submit in the process, as this will help you when you are in the search process. In the UK, students will apply using a system called UCAS. We will talk more about UCAS in subsequent presentations, but the important thing to know is that students are limited to 5 choices. Most of the time, this will be for one course, for example, business, at 5 different universities. However, it is possible to apply for more than one course at the same university, but this will take up 2 of your 5 choices. Also, later in the year, we will explain how your personal statement needs to reflect your choices. If students are interested in courses in medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine, and sciences, they are limited to 4 choices in that subject, and a 5th choice can be made in a different course. For example, students applying to medicine will often choose a biomedical science course in addition to their 4 medicine choices. In the US, as it is a decentralized admission system, there is technically no limit on the number of applications that a student is allowed to submit. However, we encourage students to apply to anywhere from 6 to 9 universities, all the while keeping the idea of best fit, as Mr. Wickham discussed earlier. Additionally, we try to break these schools into 3 groups: reach, realistic or target, and likely. What reach means is that the academic profile of the applicant is slightly below that of the average accepted student. Target means that the profile is within the range of an average accepted student, and likely means that the applicant's profile is better than the average accepted student. For more information about what U.S. universities look for in an application, Boston University is hosting a case study webinar on November 4th at 4 p.m. to help our students better understand what selective universities are looking for in their applicants. More information, including a registration link, can be found on the College Counseling link on Power School Learning.
In later presentations, we'll go into detail into the different application processes for each country. We do know that there's a growing number of students applying to Europe, and we always have applications to Canada and beyond. However, just as a quick highlight, we just wanted to show you two different processes which are quite different to each other. And this is the United States and the United Kingdom. As mentioned before, these take the lion's share of the number of applications which our students apply to. So the US is what we call a decentralized system. There are about 4,000 different universities in the nation, and each of them can quite feasibly have their own different specific application system. Thankfully, this is not the case, and the majority of them use the Common App application, which is a single application that allows students to apply to many different universities using the same platform. Yet they do have often different supplemental or additional essays to add for each specific university. Some universities will also have their own specific application for their university, quite often found on their websites. Another application system to be aware of is also the Coalition. The Coalition is starting to add more and more universities year by year on their application platform. Also, it's noteworthy to know that the University of California schools, they have their own separate system as well, and you can apply to a number of different UC schools using their UC platform. As part of this process, applying to the US, students need to get their letters of recommendations from their teachers, more than one, usually two, as well as the college counselor's letter of recommendation as well. There will be at least one essay. The UCs will have 4 slightly shorter ones, and the one essay that you have at least for each university will also be in addition to those supplemental essays that I have previously mentioned. We'll look at these different systems in more detail later on in the year and beyond into grade 12. Now, when we look at the UK side, it is a centralized system, which means that you can apply to all of the different universities using the one system called UCAS. The system is online, and students will need to apply using a buzzword that we give, and it just allows us to have the student's application linked from their application to the school, and therefore then we're able to add in things like predicted grades and the reference. So the application is relatively straightforward. Students need to write a slightly more prescriptive personal statement when you compare it to the US essay as part of their application. It will be about a page of writing, or 4,000 characters to be a little bit more precise. Support will be given out during the relevant time, and that's something that we will look at in the latter part of this year. Please don't start trying to write those before you've done at least your research, and therefore you've been able in the UK system to read all about the specific things that will be studied on the courses in which you're interested in first. In regards to the reference, it will be written by the college counsellor, yet there will be input from the teachers. During this system, there is only one reference, and it will include all parts. The college counsellors looking at the student holistically and how they get on as part of the community in ACS, as well as the teachers' inputs as well, talking about more to do with how they get on academically. Students also need to be aware of that even though this is a centralised system, there may be additional testing required according to the subject and the university in which the student applies to. Students need to address this a little bit more closer to the time when they're in grade 12.
Okay, so I have the pleasure to talk to everyone about their favorite subject, which is testing. Testing is an important part of the university application process. All grade 10 and 11 students take the PSAT, and results will be distributed in December or January. This test is good preparation for the SAT as well as demonstrating AP potential. In addition to the PSAT, we do offer the Moresby assessment. The Moresby assessment is a career inventory test, which allows the students to input their profile, answer questions, which will help them determine what career path may be possible for them and universities that align to that career path. As I had mentioned earlier, students may want to take the SAT. The SAT is offered here on campus, and students register online with thecollegeboard.com. Please check for online dates and availability as they differ from within the United States versus internationally. An alternative to the SAT is the ACT. Most students who are looking at applying to universities in the United States may consider taking the SAT or the ACT. They are both university entrance exams. However, some students who are applying to other countries may want to take the SAT in conjunction with their curriculum. For example, here in the UK, some students will choose to take the SAT in conjunction with their AP classes. Additionally, there are other tests for English proficiency. So if English is not your native language, students may be asked to take the TOEFL exam or the IELTS exam. As previously mentioned, there are entrance exams specific for courses here in the UK. Some of those are at Oxford and Cambridge, and other just general classes at some universities. This will be listed on the entrance requirements for that course that you may be interested in, so it is important that you recognize what is required for each course you're applying to. Finally, we do offer an SAT prep course here at ACS Cobham. You will be receiving more information about that, but it does happen in the springtime, starting in January and going until April. And it is run by an outside organization, and it happens on Saturday afternoons for 8 weeks.
So what are universities really looking for in applicants to their institutions? Well, obviously it's going to differ depending on the country, depending on the institutional priorities, and depending on the kind of young people and applicants or students that they're looking to recruit and attract. So there's no one real answer to this, and it really does depend on the course of the institution as well, and even the academic department within that institution. But these are some, important considerations that young people should be thinking about when applying to universities. I think most places would agree that the number one aspect of what they're looking for in an applicant is whether or not they are academically prepared to study at that institution. So this means looking at their transcripts and their predicted grades for AP and IB results. That's particularly for the UK and many European institutions, and also for lots of American institutions, Canadian institutions, looking at their overall GPA or the cumulative GPA. Here at ACS, we calculate our cumulative GPA on just grade 11 and grade 12, and that's what the universities you apply to will see. But they will also, if they're looking at transcripts, see scores and grades from previous classes as well. So I think that's the most important thing that universities are looking at. They will set their minimum standards they expect, and those minimum standards will enable some students to apply, and it may disqualify other applicants if they haven't quite met those minimum academic standards. And this is all about the culture and the type of type of student they're looking to attract onto their campus. It also is a selectivity consideration, so it's a way of universities cutting down on the number of applicants that they receive. Right? This is particularly important for many of the UK and European institutions, that if you do not meet the minimum academic standards, then there is not a whole huge amount of point of applying to that institution. We know that some institutions will be a little bit more flexible, and so that's a conversation to be having with your college counsellor when the time comes. So we really need to be considering our GPA, any predicted grades that we might get this time of grade 12, and then our academic transcripts as well. And then, sort of as we work down the list of kind of significance or importance here, it's not necessarily in an order, but we'll work through it. A key component that lots of universities are looking for is the interest and engagement in the course that a young person has chosen to study. Now, we know in the US and Canada, where there is more of an exploratory education system where young people might pick 2 or 3 or 4 courses, or spend the first year or two exploring their interests, and not necessarily having to declare a major or a specific course of study. Whereas in the UK and many countries in Asia and some in Europe as well, young people are applying for a specific course and a specific major at an institution. So they're really looking to gauge an applicant's interest and academic engagement in that subject. This young person, this applicant, really want to study that subject for the next 3 or potentially 4 years? Then we've got this idea of rigor of content, and this is swinging back across to that more exploratory aspect as well, looking at how rigorous a student's course is within the context of their school. And this is really important to think about, is this young person applying from a school that offers a number of different IB options, a number of different AP courses, and what is the rigor of their curriculum in the context of what they've been able to choose. All right. Many universities will be looking at a student's involvement in their wider school and community as well. So this could be extracurricular activities, sports, performing arts. They want to know that a young person is a little bit more than just their grades and their academic transcripts. This is particularly important in the holistic review that many US institutions will use, so looking at the whole applicant, and maybe slightly less important in some of those more specific and specialized degree programs like in the UK or in some of those Asian countries, which they're really predominantly focused on academic ability. Community service is important as well. How is a young person, how is an applicant engaging in their community, and does that mean that they will engage on their campus in the future, on that university campus in the future? So they're looking, for a wide range of different experiences. It doesn't mean, though, that an applicant has to be an all-rounder and do everything. I think what's really important is that young people decide to do one thing or 2 things really well and really engage with those things that they're interested in, rather than trying to do a little bit of everything and spreading themselves too thin. That'll make for more meaningful extracurricular and community-based experiences. So we really urge young people to think about what they're most interested in, think about what they enjoy and what they're good at, and really go full noise, if you like, at those activities. In some places, work experience can be really important, particularly if young people are applying to those more sort of applied and technical courses, things like healthcare, things like kind of business programs often are quite, work experience can be really valuable. Understanding the realities of a certain profession or a certain vocation is really important too. So if you're thinking about applying to a vocational or technical applied course, this could be, for instance, anything to do with healthcare. It could be maybe law, or perhaps some engineering programs. Is there opportunity over the next 6 months or a year to spend some time in those fields, in those areas, and explore and understand what a job, what a career in those fields might entail? And then talking about that in an application process can be really valuable. Then there are recommendations or references. So your counsellors, your counsellors will have to provide a reference for you, and teacher recommendations also are important too in a number of different systems. So in the US, generally they're looking for a counsellor recommendation, something from us, and either 1, perhaps 2, sometimes, but very rarely 3 teacher recommendations who can speak to an applicant's academic ability and their performance in the classroom. Other systems might just want 1 reference, and in which case we will compile that as counsellors. We will speak a little bit about the individual and who they are as a person, and then we will include comments from their academic teachers as well. So we'll be working on that recommendation and reference request process towards the end of grade 11, at the very end of the year. We'll be asking you to identify specific teachers who you might want to write you a nice reference or recommendation. And the final thing on that list is something that is quite specific to the US and a number of sort of private institutions around the world, and that's demonstrated interest. So many of you might have heard that it's important to show a university that you're interested in studying there, and that's certainly true. And this is a way that universities can assess an applicant's kind of interest in them, right? If they make an offer, if they're applying to, or if they've got two applicants who are very similar academically, very similar in terms of extracurricular, but one has opened emails, one has attended some webinars and some virtual events, one has met an admission officer in person or at a fair, for instance, they're going to want to maybe make an offer to the individual who has shown a little bit more interest in studying there at that institution. So that's also worth bearing in mind, and that goes back to what Mr. Forrester and Dr. Hinchy were saying earlier about taking advantage of opportunities, coming along to university visits, and attending UCAS events, fairs, and reaching out to speak to institutions, signing up to mailing lists, and all that sort of stuff as well. So there's a whole host of things that universities are considering, and this varies again between the system and the institution as to the importance that they place on each of these things. But we would encourage young people to be aware of these and to be making appropriate and sensible choices as they navigate this college and university search process.
So what's happening from now until the end of the year? Well, there are a number of touch points which we can help to prepare the grade 11 students. Here you can see a number of up-and-coming events that we have already planned. In a minute I'll make it bigger so you can see more closely. But these events are in addition to the one-to-one sessions that we will have once the current grade 12s have completed their imminent applications, and then we plan for the grade 11s to have those one-to-one sessions to start happening on a regular basis, regularly, in due course. December, January onwards. So here you can see the first event that's coming up is on November the 11th, which is an after-school workshop. And in this, students from grade 9 to 11 will have a chance to learn a little bit more about the university search process. Then on the 12th of January, we will be sending out more help on how to use BridgeU and Morrisby. This is an overview of both systems, and it will be sent out to the advisory groups. On January the 23rd, we'll have another grade 11 parent-student presentation as well. In February, there will be a UCAS fair, and the date is to be confirmed. More to come later. February the 23rd, we have a grade 11 meeting in advisory. In March, there's an Oxbridge student conference, which the date is to be confirmed. Generally for students that are interested in applying to Oxbridge and learning more about A, the process, B, what both institutions, Oxford and Cambridge, will look out for from the application. April the 21st is a university fair that we have lined up for you, and this will be in conjunction with TASIS, and it will be hosted at TASIS. Last year we did the same. It was hosted at ACS Cobham, but it was a virtual event for obvious reasons. Now, as always, please do pay attention to announcements that come your way, and these announcements could be A, on the bulletin board, or B, in BridgeU, or via emails, and on the PSL pages as well. Now, for a list of the university visitors that are coming, again, you can find that on the PSL, on BridgeU, and on the bulletin board. So there are a number of deadlines that you need to be aware of, that we generally have an internal deadline, which is the ACS Cobham's internal deadline, which is not the same as the university's deadline. The reason why we have these internal deadlines is they're slightly before the university's deadline in order to make sure that you have enough time to deal with any issues with an application, and also to give us time to upload the relevant documents and references and recommendations that are needed within your application systems. If you meet these ACS Cobham deadlines, then you will definitely be meeting your university deadlines. So what are these deadlines? Well, these deadlines will be happening for you in grade 12. Not yet, but it's good to know in general what we're looking at for the future. We have got October the 7th as the very first deadline that comes in, which is the UCAS application for Oxford or Cambridge. You may have heard of that being referred to as Oxbridge. And also students that apply for medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine and or sciences. Then later on, there will be the 20th of October as the next deadline. This is for students that are applying to the US for either an early decision or an early action. There are also deadlines for November, such as the UC schools. The early decision and early action deadlines from the university side are usually on November the 1st. And so we are building into the system a chance to make sure that all documents can be uploaded, as well as let you know of those issues. On December the 1st, all the other applications to the US and the UK have the deadline. So all students by December the 1st in grade 12 would have had all of the applications completed. If you're not applying to the US or the UK, please notify your college counsellor so an appropriate deadline can be established. There are deadlines for something we call rolling applications to the US. A rolling application is an application that is less common in the US than the regular route. These are applications that roll throughout the year. Getting these done as soon as possible is the best situation for you, because these universities with rolling applications have filled their spots, then they close their application. Please be aware of deadlines. There are now some US and Canadian universities with slightly earlier deadlines, for example, October the 15th. Now, the next thing I want to draw your attention to is the University Application Pledge Form. Once you get your college counsellor assigned to you, whether it be myself, Mr. Wickham or Dr. Hinchy, will then be sharing the pledge form for you to read through a series of responsibilities from the student side, responsibilities from the parent side, and what you can also expect from us as part of the process as well. So it's really important just to make sure that you do look over that pledge form, sign it and get it back into your college counsellor as well.
So we would have loved to get some current seniors in to talk about what they wish they had done. But if they were here on this recording, they would certainly be saying that they wish that they started earlier than they actually did. And I think this is something that every young person, and particularly parents as well, can be thinking about now in terms of what kind of institutions am I looking at and where might be most suitable for me, right? Thinking about which teachers you're engaging really well with in school can be something really useful to help with that recommendation letter process. Being aware that these teachers are going to be writing a recommendation potentially about you in the future, and doing well in class, right? It's one of the most important things that I mentioned earlier, and these recommendations do kind of count as well for university admission. We will be talking about essays and personal statements throughout the next the end of this year, right? We're going to be coming into your English classes and we're going to be explaining what an essay is and what it looks like, and writing a personal statement for kind of UK and European institutions as well. And from that, we expect young people to start drafting and start writing once we've done that process, and giving us feedback before the summer break so they can go away and then work on improving it over the summer. Now is the time to start visiting institutions. Many of our grade 12s are going out on visits simply because it's the first time they've been able to due to COVID, but now we're starting to see universities open up, offer a lot more on-campus visits, and we're also seeing them coming back to us as well in person here in school. So making the most of those opportunities, and if you end up going on a little trip to a different city or a different place that you've never been to before, why not call by the university? Why not think about the kind of institutions that might be available in that city? And maybe, you never know, you might end up applying there, particularly if you enjoy being in that city for your trip. Something that's really important that we're kind of working on at the moment with our grade 12s are deadlines, and being aware that we have internal deadlines that differ slightly from external deadlines. I know Mr. Forrester's just talked a little bit more about that, so I'm not going to dwell on that, but please know that deadlines are critical and there is no second chances, and if you miss a deadline by a minute, tough, your application will not be going in. That's the way they work. These institutions get far more applications than they do places, have places available. Many of them do anyway. And so, meeting deadlines is really, really critical here. I've talked a bit about proofreading and getting early help with things like essays and personal statements. We don't need you necessarily to be working on personal statements and essays right now. We will come into your English class, as I said earlier. Not waiting until the last minute is linked to starting early. We are working with grade 12s right now, and those people who are coming to us saying, hey, my deadline's in 2 or 3 weeks and I haven't started yet, we're not able to provide them as much support as we would have liked, simply because it's rushed, it's last minute. Our time is also booked up with people who have been organised and have shared essays with us, and we are working with, in meetings and booking sessions in. So it's really important to not wait until the last minute and to be prepared. A general timeline, students should be coming back from the summer break into the start of grade 12 with a good understanding of the institutions they want to apply for, the courses, if relevant, that they want to apply for, and having a general idea of where they're looking, and have started writing some of those drafts as well. There's another thing, Mr. Forrester spoke about it earlier, Moresby. This is a really interesting kind of career exploration platform. If you are sat there going, I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life, I don't know what I want to do as a career, I don't know what I want to study at university, then engaging with Moresby, we'll do a workshop on this and we'll come into advisory time over the next couple of months. Engaging with Moresby can really help to focus up, some of the ideas and things that you might be considering and thinking about, and how that could tie into potential future university courses and then future careers as well. And then the most important thing is being in grade 11 now. We talked about GPA a little bit earlier, and the cumulative GPA being calculated from grade 11 is working hard academically and doing well in school. That's really important. And the higher your academic grades, the more options that you will have in the future. So we understand that not everyone is a grade 7 scoring student, a 6 scoring student, an A star student, and that we will work with you to find the right academic options to that suit you, depending on where your grades are at the end of this year and at the start of grade 12.
So in conclusion, we just want to state that together we can do this. Your college counselors are here to help you. Remember, it's important to keep the lines of communication open. Talking to your college counselor about your plans is really important. Also, we understand that you want to get this process going. However, it is important to understand that we are currently working with grade 12 students, so you will appreciate this next year when we put you first at the top of our priority list. So at this point, we ask you please to just give us a little bit of time, maybe until after December 1st, before you start trying to make your appointments with your college counselor. However, you're always welcome to email us, set up appointments when we are available. Our email addresses are there. Please keep those lines of communication open, and together we will get through it. Thank you very much, and happy grade 11.